Call the Committee of the Whole meeting to order at 1 p.m. for Monday, April 14th. Jody?
Thank you. Please note council meetings are streamed live and recorded on YouTube. Attendees acknowledge that in accordance with Section 17.2 of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, names, addresses, and other details provided when speaking at a council meeting will be publicly shared. Should you have any questions related to the collection or disclosure of personal information, please contact the Legislative and Advisory Services Division for the Town of High River by sending an email to foip@highriver.ca.
Thanks, Jody. First motion adopting the agenda. I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Kinghorn. The Committee of the Whole adopt the agenda for the Committee of the Whole meeting April 14th as presented.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. You have the motion.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Previous minutes. Ask for a motion from Councillor Walsh that the Committee of the Whole adopt the minutes from the March 24th, 2025 Committee of the Whole meeting as presented.
You have my motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. A country corridor study. Kaylee?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Today I'm here to give you an update as we close off one phase of this project and open up into the next phase. So just a quick recap, the town engaged ISL to complete a corridor study. Within this corridor study project, we have committed to completing two phases of engagement. Phase 1 of engagement, which was completed in the fall of 2024, which included two pop-up events, one at the Highwood Spray Park and Pump Track on the 30th of August, and the other being the High River Farmers Market in September. We also completed two in-person sessions, one being at the Notre Dame Collegiate School, and the other being with the Highwood Golf Course members. An online survey was also open to the public between August 30th and October 8th. As we wrap up phase 1 of engagement, we move into phase 2 engagement. I'm going to go through some slides with you this afternoon, which will give you kind of a breakdown of where we're at and where we're heading. So our first slide just kind of breaks down quickly what I just went over, which was the kind of the background of phase 1 engagement and moving forward into the phase 2 engagement. That is the state, that's where we're at right now, is phase 2 that will begin here this spring. We plan to run it similar to phase 1, where we will have 2 open houses at key locations along the High Country Drive in late April or early May. In-person sessions again with the Notre Dame Collegiate students and the Highwood Golf Course members, and also open up another survey which will be available to collect feedback on the options that will be presented online. There we go. What we heard. So through engagement, the first round of engagement, we had 58 people to attend our in-person events, and we had 198 people respond to our survey. The full report will be online. However, here's some key themes that were identified. High Country Drive and Highview Gate is still a hot topic. We also have the topic of speeding. There was some conversation around flashing signals being installed in key locations, parking, enforcement, pathways, traffic noise, and just overall concerns. So doubts about the study leading to changes and any concerns about misuse of tax dollars for the study. So as you see these slides coming up, these are also boards that will be generated for the public for us to have at our open house events. So they will be large boards. Keep in mind there are going to be quite a few slides here. They likely won't all be on display. What will happen is we'll put the key boards up, and as conversation is generated, that'll kind of generate which boards we bring forward so we can ensure that we have the appropriate boards that are making sense for the conversation that's taking place. So the key issues map here identifies the High Country Drive based on the technical safety analysis, the on-site observations, and the community feedback we received. The safety analysis did include RCMP reports of any events that have taken place, anything from our first responders, any reports that they had generated over a number of years, any traffic counts that we had completed, some speeding or speed analysis from our peace officers, and then an actual on-site evaluation from ISL, where they went out and walked the entire corridor, observed the usage of the corridor, and also took some measurements of what was built. As you can see, there are some symbols on the map, and it identifies some key areas and some key concerns. The main one being that drivers can't see pedestrians crossing because of on-street parking. That will be the main theme that we see along the corridor. There's also, and this was just based on the way it was constructed, inadequate departure site distances. And then another few areas we have, which would be drivers can't see pedestrians crossing because of a curve in the road, because this road obviously was built with quite a few curves in it. So these are some key areas where we're going to need to address.
Can you tell me what that means? Inadequate distance over the last one?
I don't know how to go back on the slides, so let me just pull up my last slide. Inadequate departure site distances.
Yeah, what does that mean?
That is where you, as a vehicle, come up to an intersection, and you cannot go into the intersection you need to go through the intersection or into the intersection to be able to see whether there's traffic coming and going, often caused by whether there's vehicles parked too close to the intersection, or there's a curve in the road, or there's any other obstruction that might be in place. Like a tree could potentially be the issue. Now, along the corridor, we did observe that trees aren't, and vegetation don't seem to be an issue along the corridor. Okay. It's mostly in and around the parked vehicles or the curve in the road. Like that's being kind of the two major driving factors for the concerns that are seen, or that we are able to identify as being the concerns, causing the concerns.
Thank you.
So in our boards, we have some examples. These examples aren't local examples, and we do have some versions of these local examples that we have asked the consultant to look into potentially taking pictures, because it's a little bit easier to have our residents go out and take a look at these examples if they're somewhere nearby. So they may come into an open house and have a conversation with us, and either we can show them a picture of a local example and they go, hey, actually I've driven by there before and I've never noticed that actually was what it was. It works or it doesn't work, or they like it or they don't like it, or they have the opportunity then to go afterwards and potentially take a look at those examples. So we are working on that, but you'll notice that the examples here are not local examples, but they do provide good examples of options that could take place. The example of which we actually put in place with temporary IC or the TCC curbs was curb extensions. And that allows, not only do we make the crossing for the road narrower for the pedestrian, but it also often purposely makes it so that a vehicle cannot park within that space because it's a curb. Unless you're going to drive up onto the curb, you can't park. And so then they are designed then to keep the parked vehicles back from the intersection, the appropriate distance that would provide the sight lines for the vehicle to be able to approach the intersection and see right or left before they have to go into the intersection to make the decision to travel through the intersection. So that is one option. Other options brought forward by the consultant are raised crosswalks or speed humps or tables. Raised crosswalks are often a good example that are being right now regularly implemented in school zones or playground zones, because we are already requiring slower speeds in those areas. So those are great opportunities and locations. So raised crosswalks and speed humps and tables are great solutions when we pick the locations that make sense along the corridor. And then their other options are reducing the speed limit from 50 kilometers to 40 kilometers. That not only improves the road users' use of the road, but it also makes it safer for the pedestrians. A pedestrian struck by a vehicle traveling at 40 kilometers has a 70% chance of survival in comparison to a pedestrian who is struck at 50 kilometers an hour and only has a 15% chance of survival. Additionally, changing the speed limit from 50 to 40 would support the town plan's policy in lowering speed limits. It also provides, or it encourages, when we go down into those 30-kilometer speed zones, we're now asking them to lower their speed limit from 40 to 30, only 10 kilometers, versus from 50 to 30. So we have usually better compliance when we're not asking for as big of a shift in speed difference. The other option being recommended is also limiting on-street parking. That is a low-cost solution, so we can do it by signage. Signage, absolutely, you can put it up at the intersection saying, no parking past this point. It involves enforcement, though, so if it's not being followed in the sign, unless someone goes out there and enforces it, the sign itself isn't going to enforce the no parking at the intersection.
I have a question about where the water park is. They don't have any other parking, those houses. Where would they park?
So all those houses along by the spray park do have lane access.
Do they?
And they do have parking pads in the back of their properties.
Oh, I didn't think they had garages.
They all have double parking, the townhouse, the
Yeah.
two-story townhouses, all have double parking pads in the back. Some have built garages, some haven't, but they have 2 spots in the back of each of those lots.
Oh, well then, okay.
So there is opportunity for parking on site, which is, I believe, in all of our development for residential does provide some form of parking on site. Whether or not it's utilized or not is dependent on the construction of that particular site, but it is available and it is available. On-street parking, it's not removing it, it's limiting some of it in key areas that would provide visibility. So one of the hot topics that's still a theme is Highview Gate intersection and the improvements. Below there are 2 options provided, one being a 4-way stop and one reverting back to a 2-way stop. The following are recommended for both options. So option 1 being the 4-way stop. The 4-way stop does not meet the technical criteria for the intersection, which can lead to compliance and operational issues like longer waits. However, the existing curb extensions help improve compliance by narrowing the roadway and drawing attention to the intersection. The option 2 being presented was a 2-way stop control. This would we would still be encouraged to have the curb extensions, because that would still have better compliance of slowing down the traffic through the intersection. It also prevents vehicles, again, from parking within that distance that would provide any sightline issues. Obviously, there is a curve right on that area. It could be either accomplished with no parking signs or it could be accomplished with curb extensions. Other options or other comments made by the consultant on that one also involve moving the golf cart crossing next to the pedestrian crossing ahead of the stop sign. So right now it's behind the stop sign. This addresses issues of golf carts crossing between traffic and not being visible to oncoming drivers. Realign the golf cart path to the new crossing. The added curves help slow the golf carts down, but they would be designed according to not only golf carts, but we do need to take into consideration the golf course maintenance equipment. And additionally, keeping the existing path size stop signs for the golf carts that reinforces vehicle right-of-way, and this added signage to show that golf carts must yield to pedestrians. Yes.
Thank you. Going back to option 1, 4-way stop control, what does not meet the technical criteria? Whose technical criteria and what does that mean?
Okay, so the technical criteria is the MGA has us follow TAC as a standard for traffic unless otherwise chosen by a municipality through a bylaw. So right now we're following TAC and the consultants would follow TAC. Typically, well, within TAC, it does state that for a four-way stop, you would want to ensure for compliance that the traffic volumes would be similar in all four legs. And right now, the way our traffic works is that 90% of it travels east-west, and there's only about a 10% that travels north-south. So it's not close to being similar. So you would have the stop on the 10%, and you would have the free flow for the 90%. Does that answer? Good? Okay, perfect. Did we have any further questions? Because I know this has been a hot topic.
So, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
One of my questions, first and foremost, according to the Traffic Safety Act, 5 meters is the allowable distance to park from a stop sign. So enforcement, are we enforcing that? Or right now we've got some curbs to prevent, like, where are we in actually enforcing along High Country Drive that there is not parking right up to the stop sign?
So the challenge with enforcement is it does need to be reported to our enforcement officers. So it is reliant on often our residents calling enforcement to say, hey, I see a regular problem happening here. Again, there are some challenges. We don't have signs out there either. So
I don't understand why we'd need an additional sign. It's in every one of us that has a driver's license. It was a test on the...
That is correct. There have been some challenges in enforcing some of these tickets. I don't have a lot of the background and experience, so I can always follow up with that. But that has just been one of the challenges that I know our enforcement officers have had in trying to enforce it. So, and just being that you do need your residents to be regularly calling in and requesting, because we don't go out there and patrol.
Okay. Just to me, that was the common sense of it. So, thank you.
School buses. I understand, I could be wrong, that there's some school bus drop-off points along High Country Drive, pickup spots and drop-off. I didn't see that referenced anywhere in the study or on any of the mapping. Can we make sure that those folks are comfortable with what we're doing as well? If it is indeed the case, I mean, I don't know, I don't have kids at school, but if it is the case that school buses are there, it should be, make sure they're comfortable.
For sure. So school buses are one of our external stakeholders that we've been remaining in contact. Our continued response from them is no comment. They will make whatever works as long as we make sure that the turning radiuses are appropriate. A school bus turning radius would easily be met because we're meeting our fire trucks turning radiuses when creating these designs, but we do provide them an opportunity to provide comment because we do know that they do have school bus stops and that they may wish to alter them, and we don't want them to have to show up one day and have to alter it versus be prepared to alter something if they choose to alter a lay or a plan for their bus stops.
So you're saying they have been asked, but they haven't responded?
They have responded with no comment.
No, with no comment?
Yeah, that they don't have any comments to share.
Thank you.
Jenny?
On option, well, I guess on both options, they do have kind of still the bump outs of some sort in there. I know one of the issues was on that south lane, there's a meridian in the middle. That does impede a little bit of the turning. Was that addressed at all or not really?
So through detailed design, we would have to evaluate those center medians because it does become challenging when you have both a center median and the bump outs. And so often one gives for the other, or there's alterations, it's pulled back. It would be something that would have to be addressed through detailed design when they are putting the turning templates and running the vehicles through the test of the corners.
And none of their options included any lights of any, flashing lights of any sort?
There weren't any flashing lights included on this particular option.
Yeah.
It would be something we could discuss through detailed
But it
design.
wasn't part of what they thought was a good solution?
Not at this particular location.
Cool, thank you.
Jimmy Barton?
Thanks, Craig. Jenny touched on the one item, or I have a couple items. One of them was the flashing crosswalk signs. I guess the one question I have is, I was just thinking of I can't remember what the name of the street up is, but where the fire hall is and goes towards Circle K and all there, there's a couple spots where we have lit crosswalks. What is our policy like to determine when we put one of those in and when we don't? Or do we have a policy?
Council says.
Okay, so, but I think we should have a policy because there's a few spots where, you know, we have, like, to me, some of the spots like along High Country Drive are probably, in my opinion, have more traffic flow than some of the other areas in town that we do have those flashing.
Yeah, so because we don't have a standing policy or bylaw with the town of High River, we then defer back to TAC, which then has a warrant process that you would go through and you would answer specific questions on the pedestrian count, the vehicle count, the type of road, what it's used for, whether or not it can be identified as a main corridor for pedestrian movement. So there is a warrant process that we defer to because we just don't have a very specific bylaw or policy in place. And that's often what a lot of municipalities do, is because getting down to these granular things, it really becomes, we take a look at that TAC, but then you still want to take a look at it from a local level when making that final decision.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification. And then the one other thing I noticed on one of the maps, and I can't, doesn't really matter which map it is, but it often around the spray park and that curve, they're proposing to actually have some no parking zones. And I get it, yeah, they have some spots in the back. But one of the things that I think I've noticed a few times that I've gone along the spray park prior to the pump track being in is we're just getting some congestion and parking in that area. And and maybe an option down the road is to actually take the parking lot at the spray park and extend it and make it bigger, because if we're going to have a pump track event, right, or several of those, that might become a bigger issue now that we've got basically three. So we've got spray park, pump track, and the playground all there, causing traffic problems. So I don't know if they've considered that or could put it in there.
So the study would be just simply addressing right now the usage and the flow of traffic on High Country Drive and the safety aspects for the pedestrians crossing High Country Drive and the vehicles traveling along High Country Drive.
All right, thank you.
Okay, do we have any more questions on the slide?
Brenda, did you get yours answered? You're good?
Am I good to keep going? Or
What's that?
Do you have a question, or do you want me to keep going? Sorry.
Yeah, keep going.
Okay. So how ISL has completed their maps is they've created 3 options. One is a prioritized locations map, the other one being a targeted areas map, and the last one being a full corridor. So option 1 focuses on locations where it is hardest for drivers to see pedestrians or oncoming traffic, prioritizes areas where children are most likely to be present. We then move into option 2, which is the targeted areas. So it's in addition to option 1, so it builds off of option 1, and it addresses the rest of the locations where it's hard for drivers to see the pedestrians or oncoming traffic, and it targets key areas with speeding concerns. And then your last option builds on all 3. And so in addition of option 1 and 2, it expands speed management and extends no parking zones to make it easier for drivers to see oncoming traffic. So I'll just skip to screen 1. So we have the options laid out on the map, and the intention on the conversation through the engagement is, what do you think about option 1 and what can be done better? Because if there's an option that we're presenting and there's an option that is more preferred by the public, it would be something we would look into, because you want to implement something that's going to be accepted by the public. So it may not be exactly the option we're looking at, but it might be something similar that's a lot more accepted by the public. So in this option, you'll notice that the stop sign remains. The they have the 40-kilometer speed limit posted. There's no parking zones created, and that would be implemented likely by signage. And there are areas where curb extensions are recommended, and you can see that they are specifically kind of where we have the curves in the road, or it makes it very challenging for us to see. You'll also notice with those curb extensions that that's often where some of the no parking is kind of put in place, because it's the sight lines that become challenging, and the parking being some of the sightline challenge. So while the curb extensions help, it doesn't necessarily provide all the sight lines required for that intersection, which is why you would have the incorporation of both curb extensions and no parking zones. Option 2 builds onto option 1. So it not only addresses kind of our key prioritized areas that where we have our biggest visibility issues, it starts to look at other areas and other ways that we can kind of manage that pedestrian crossing, pedestrian visibility, and some of the speed concerns. So you'll notice right where the by the pump track and spray park is, we've actually got a new crosswalk put in there with curb extensions. That new crosswalk and curb extensions, so the curb extensions provides kind of a 24/7 enforcement. It pinches the road, still makes it 2 full lanes for vehicles that drive through there, but it's a little uncomfortable for a driver to just pick up and start speeding through there, or it encourages them to slow down if they haven't already slowed down. The curb extension also provides that there's no vehicles kind of parked within that area, so then it is a lot more visible to see whether it be a child or an adult out on the curb extension before they're crossing the road, and that they're not hidden behind a vehicle, because you can imagine that most children are actually shorter than a vehicle and you don't see them until they're already in the road. You'll notice further curb extensions and raised crosswalks, and you'll notice that the 2 raised crosswalks have been placed in the school zone. So those are, as we understand from our engagement with the school, 2 key crosswalks within that school zone that are used by students, parents, and teachers. And then option 3 looks at the entire corridor. So you'll notice that there is quite a bit more no parking zones put in place. Again, can be done by signage, which would be low-hanging fruit, easy to capture, easy to implement immediately with added enforcement. Or you could look at those areas as how we want to do further no parking restrictions. This is kind of taking it the whole way. So those are our 3 options, and that will be presented to the public to gain some of that feedback. And that is my presentation. Oh, I guess one thing to note, during phase 1, we had used multiple ways of communicating with our public, whether it was on our website, whether it was social media. We had a couple of fence banners put up, and then another method that we used was putting lawn signs out at the mailboxes, because if people were going for mail, we knew that at least that was one place we could put a sign that we knew they would see. It's another method we were hoping to continue with if there was no concerns with it, because it seemed to be in the analytics when we asked how people heard about the engagement and the survey and the information about the project, that one seemed to receive the most hits as the most useful form of notification to the public that something was going on and to get them engaged. And so that our plan is to continue similar to what we did in that phase 1 and getting kind of the information out to the public. We do plan on updating the current project page with the full extended report of what we heard. I think we kind of identified that at the beginning as, ensuring that the public knew that they were heard and where all the information came from and the different, it wasn't just through engagement, but it was also through the many other technical evaluations that were completed. So that concludes my presentation for today.
Thanks, Kaylee. Any other questions from council? So you're saying the next step is to take this back to the public and put the options forward?
That is correct. So if there's Any further comments, we'd be happy to take them, or if council is happy with the way the boards are presented here today, we can take those to the public and start booking in these key events with the actual location, so the school and the golf course, and then getting in our couple locations where we can do our kind of pop-ups or open houses.
Okay. Councillor Nychuk.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. Thanks, Kaylee. Couple of questions, unless I missed. There was no reference to total number of parking spaces potentially eliminated, and to what sections. I would think, I'm curious, so it has me leading to people around the school and Prairie Sound, right? Might be curious about what that would be. I walk my dog a lot, and there are cars that are parked in exactly the same spot all the time. So there will be residents that feel that is their parking spot. Because I'm sure they squabble amongst each other if somebody parks in the spot that they regularly park in. So just to kind of be ahead of that curveball, maybe.
That's a great one, and I can absolutely get that.
That might pop up. And then in terms of where the playground, pump track, and spray park are, and that crosswalk that's in the middle, does that just come from consultant engineering, that because of that span there should be one there, or does that come from maybe some communication we got from residents? For me, I don't see people crossing there, but I'm not right there 24 hours, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
You know, during the week I'm there in the evening usually. If I'm walking my dog, that's when I'm there. On the weekend I might bike by there or something, but I can't recall ever seeing a kid or kids
There's a bus that stops there.
crossing right in the middle there.
There's a bus that stops there every day.
It stops it right at that spot. Okay.
Yep.
There you go, because I go the other way to my office every day. I don't go that way. So thanks, Jenny. I appreciate that. There you
So it's generated from both feedback from the public about just in general the area. So when we heard that there were some concerns about crossing in the area, we did pick a location that would make sense. It kind of gave that mid-block from between the two intersections along that stretch. It also was a straight stretch within a curved area, and it also provided an opportunity to potentially encourage the drivers to continue to slow down or to slow down because of the pinch in the road partway through the playground zone, where we do want to have that 30 kilometers rather than the higher speeds.
Yeah, I get the pinch thing. I understand that. I appreciate Jenny's comments about the bus stops there. I'm surprised that the bus can stop there because there's so much parking that happens.
They do put out their sign, and then the kids go.
Oh, they just stop on the street. They're not pulling. Okay.
Yeah, and then the kids.
Well, then there's then nobody can go. Like, I mean, it's pinched as it is. There's usually cars parked on both sides. So the bump out thing I'm maybe not getting because it's constricted already with vehicles that are parked on the side street. But just, yeah, thanks. Just observation and comments. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you.
Brenda?
I'm good, Craig, thank you.
Okay. So you're going to do more public engagement on the three options that we've got. Right now, this all started with that golf cart crossing from request from the golf course. So my question is obviously that is the main issue. There's lots of things that we could do either now or in the future. The main issue is still the golf cart crossing. We have golf starting now. We've got temporary measures in there right now. My question is what do we want to do with that crossing right now? I'm going to leave the temporary stuff in, pull it out, or build permanent?
Or tweak.
Or what?
Or tweak.
Or a tweak? Tell me what a tweak looks like.
It would look like us rearranging the TCCs that are out there right now and some of the signage related to the golf court crossing and getting some cold mix out there and putting in a kind of altering their pathway to give them better access to having a crosswalk next to the pedestrian crosswalk.
Because I think we all agree something has to change there now until we decide maybe what the actual permanent piece looks like. So, Jenny?
I agree with the tweak, is if in all options, it does suggest moving that pathway to meet the pedestrian one. And if there's a way that we could do that with the structures we have now, and if the golf course would move their path, I think that would make more sense than leaving it the way it is, which is an issue. And if we're going to possibly change it to be more effective in both scenarios, it kind of shows that that is more effective. And I like the idea of changing that if we can. I know the equipment crossing was a problem, having it that way, but I don't know if that can be altered as well or help them at all so that people aren't going out onto the street.
Yeah, so originally we weren't using cold mix when we were trying to maneuver the equipment around, which is what was putting them on in tighter corners. By using cold mix and putting that in place, it gives us a little bit more option because we were trying to really avoid anything that would involve maintenance or equipment afterwards to remove. We could use cold mix to create a better ramp. The biggest issue that the consultant has identified being with the way it is right now is that the golf carts are crossing in between traffic, in between queued vehicles. So they are effectively in a blind spot when they're behind a vehicle that's stopped at the stop sign on the south side of the road. And so the biggest or the quickest thing that we could do to improve that would be to realign their crosswalk with the pedestrian crosswalk at the intersection behind the stop sign, because then they're visible, not behind a parked car, they're visible and they're behind the stop sign. So then the vehicle has to stop anyways to the stop sign. We do obviously want the golf carts to respect that pedestrians still have their right of way, but having them on two separate crosswalks beside each other and implementing, cold mix as a better way of maybe getting them down to the road and building somewhat of a temporary ramp, or the alternative would be to build the new pathway as an interim step until and maybe permanent curbs were built in place for having the extension of the curbs.
I like the idea.
If we did the tweak, what happens to the bump outs, the temps?
The temps, so if we did the tweak, we would ultimately still leave the temps in because the extended curbs are still recommended by the consultant because it is the best way to keep vehicles from parking in the intersection within the sight lines.
Right. Okay, I don't like leaving the temporary stuff, to be blunt.
Okay.
It looks like crap. I get it. It was there to kind of see how traffic would flow and everything, but leaving it much longer, I'm not. Like if we view it as being that's the way to do it, then I think we pull the trigger and just build the thing out.
And that's totally doable as well.
Pardon me?
That's doable. It's a much bigger project. Obviously, we'd have to get
Exactly.
a detailed design and construction out there. So it wouldn't be as quickly as tweaking would implement, which could get golf season started, if that's the concern. Doing a full construction would take us a little bit longer to get into it. So we wouldn't have that done for the start of golf season. It would have to take place
During.
probably the end of golf season. We could definitely do it in the fall. We'd want to still do it before winter.
Brenda?
Thank you. So my questions and comments are similar in and around the golf course. This did start with the golf course in May of 2022. So we're 3 years. We're not temporary anymore. The presence of what's in that intersection, we do need to make some changes that represent we're not temporary anymore. Removing the bump outs and the paraphernalia around the intersection, going back to a 2-stop sign and a flashing light. I know everyone was against it for some reason when this first came in, but that was really their only ask, a flashing light. And now we're talking about flashing lights at how many?
lights.
No flashing lights. So, but my point being that a simple thing like that, and we've got all this stuff in here, and again, it's not temporary, it's 3 years, it's getting really long in the tooth. So I say we get the stuff out of the intersection and realign it to make it safe, because it's, I've been there when people are trying to cross and there's multiple vehicles. It's terrible, you know, or cyclists. I've been one of those too. So that's my opinion. Get the stuff out of there and move it along, because, and what does the golf course feel about this? What do they want? Have we talked any more with them?
No for paths.
Tunnel.
Well, you'll get your bridge. How much
Here's
more do you
what I
want?
think, Kaylee, that we bring back a couple options. So there's this, which is great, that can go to the public, and they can have their input on these 3 options. But for right now, for the next committee of the whole meeting, if you can bring back what the tweak would look like, both with the bump outs, the temporary bump outs in place, and with them removed. No, I'm just right now in or out, but
I mean, the bump outs, I mean, are a visual that people don't park there. An option, could it be at summertime, so they shouldn't be covered? Could you spray paint the no parking lines or no? I like the
can.
bump outs personally. I know they're ugly, but they do what they're supposed to do. And in the minute you remove them, there's 2 cars I know are going to park as close to that stop sign as possible if we remove them.
hey, walk outside. I love bump outs. Right? I get them, and it's just, I don't want that. Like, if we're going to do it and we all believe the bump outs are important and that they work, and then I think we build them. I think we just do it.
So then I guess, yes, then our next step would be a recommendation from council with a budget to procure a consultant to complete detailed design to,
Okay, let's
Get a
do this, because
contractor.
we got one step that has to take place, and
Yep.
that's meeting with Troy Hurl at the golf course to figure out how this is all gonna, because it's needs to either way we go, need to realign where that golf cart crossing actually is to make it. So if you can do that, bump out, temporary bump outs in, temporary bump outs out, and permanent. That's what we need to, like, that's what this council needs to deal with. The rest of this corridor study, we're gonna go back to the public. It's gonna be next council that deals with whether they wanna do anything, but we have to do something about what we started with. Is that clear?
so I'm going to return to the next committee of the whole with an option for a tweak with bump outs, an option with a tweak without bump outs, and what a permanent option looks like.
Correct.
Okay.
And feedback from the golf course as to where they're,
Okay. So first meeting of May, or do you want this next council meeting, the second one in April?
no, let's shoot for the first one.
First one of May? Okay, perfect.
And then what an overpass would look like? Or a tunnel?
Hey, I mean, money can build you whatever you want.
I'm voting that one down.
We good?
We're good, thank you.
Council's good? Okay. Thanks, Kaylee. Or sorry, Michael. Oh, don't move yet.
No, Kaylee, it's okay, thank you. No, I was just looking at, I was just thinking about the phasing, and where I'm sitting at is this temporary tweak is what we get done this year. I don't see us building something permanent this year. I think that's a disruption to the golf course. I think it's a disruption to the summer. I think this is a shoulder season build, so if we had a if that was the last thing we voted on in October about when this thing gets built in the spring before golf season starts, I think we'd be on the right track. And putting that into a budgetary allotment for next year as well. Instead of trying to squeeze that in financially this year, it's probably best to include it as a capital item for next year's budget, and we squeeze the tweak in this year to start the process, so to speak.
Sounds good. Wide open Q&A, Chris and staff. Nothing. Meeting adjourned 1:45.